Hi, everyone. Long time no see. I hope everyone's doing really well, especially during this holiday season. Um, I will cut the formalities and just kind of get right into this. I know the elephant in the room is that the podcast has not been running for the last 6 months. We really stopped kind of abruptly, and I didn't really give anybody much of an explanation. I did give an explanation to my team and the people I work closely with, but you listeners, I really did not address why we just stopped dropping content. So that's what I'm here to do today. Um, this is actually the first time I've recorded in 6 months. I haven't recorded anything in the entire time. I've actually hardly sat in this seat. It's been hard to do that. The story. I'm going to try to get this as quickly as possible. Giving it the time that it desires and needs, but also trying to just get through this, as quickly as I can and efficiently as I can. This is really my mental health story, believe it or not, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I hope that by the end of this episode, however long this will be, I didn't really plan what I was going to say. I don't have any script. I'm really just talking off the top of my head right now. That I hope that after I get across what I need to get across, that I hope that this episode does help somebody out there, even if it's just one person who might be struggling with similar things that I have, or maybe just helps them with their own mental health journey or any sort of trauma or issues that they have in their own lives. So I first off want to address that I love being a content creator. The last 3 years doing this podcast has been incredibly fulfilling for me. It has given me an outlet and a platform to talk about one of my biggest passions, which is music. And along the way, I've been able to meet so many people, amazing people, made so many amazing connections. I think the content, what we've built, speaks for itself. I know we're not the biggest podcast in the world, but it was just so amazing and incredible to see the organic growth that we were creating. And it just gave me such a different purpose that I haven't had in my life. Doing this podcast, it really was one of the most just favorite parts of my whole life. But in essence, that actually ended up partly what became the problem. And I think one of the things that any content creator I think can potentially relate to this, whether you're an artist, or a podcaster or a video editor or director or whatever it is. Obviously these creative outlets, they stem from passion. And while that's amazing and it's a great thing, it can be sometimes a little consuming. And I allowed it to really just kind of take over my life in ways that I hadn't really anticipated when I started. I think because we love it so much and we want people to consume the content, we want to always keep creating and creating and creating. But I think at some level, maybe I'll speak for myself, I got lost in that a little bit too much. It became the biggest priority in my entire life over my mental health and my physical health. And of course, as the podcast started to grow, and while that was so fulfilling and so just incredible to see the growth, I think I got so caught up in it, and that's all I cared about. That's all I was doing. I was just way too wrapped up in it, and I wasn't paying attention to my own health. And as most people know, if you've been an avid fan of this podcast for the last 3 years, obviously I'm a full-time English teacher first, a basketball coach second, and then a son, a friend, a boyfriend. I just have so many other responsibilities outside of this podcast. But the podcast became number one. and of course over my mental health and my physical health. And I started to struggle and burn out a little bit. I won't lie. I think as it grew, as the podcast grew and the community grew and the demand was becoming greater, it was so just, again, amazing to see. But I think it became a little bit, there was a lot of pressure that came with that. Wanting to help everybody out and give people a platform to share their stories, which is honestly one of my favorite parts of having this podcast, and listening to new music and, promoting it for everybody. But it just became a little bit too much. And I started to get very overwhelmed. And just for context, I've said this a couple times on the show, very probably in passing, but I haven't really got into it too much in detail. But I do have an just generalized anxiety disorder. I was diagnosed at age 19. I'm going to be 28 on December 9th, so which is coming up, which is also a little scary in its own right. Kind of the end of my 20s is fastly approaching. I know some people that are older than me, especially like old head Ed out there. I'm sure he's rolling his eyes at me because I know that's pretty young, but it's the oldest I've ever been, is what I'd like to say. And anyway, for me, I do think I have had anxiety even before 19, before it was diagnosed. And one of the amazing things I think about my anxiety is, as I started to understand it a little bit better, I've started to realize that really my anxiety, the way that I cope with it, is by staying busy. And I find that sitting still and being still doesn't help my anxiety at all. It makes my mind just race and race and race. But if I am constantly doing things and being productive, I would find that the anxiety would ward away. But what I didn't realize, I think, as I was doing that, as I was, teaching, coaching, doing the podcast, and again, not so much doing the podcast, but I guess at the rate we were doing it, putting pressure on myself to drop weekly episodes, post every single day on social media, constantly comparing myself to others on social media and other podcasts that were doing, in my eyes, maybe bigger things than we were, which is the worst thing you can ever do. And I think that's, again, the drawback of social media in some regard, even though social media and there's just so many platforms out there for us creatives to, put out this content. I think on the flip side of that, the dark side of that is, again, the pressure that we put on ourselves to stay relevant and be relevant. And I just got so caught up in it, too caught up in it. And, I wasn't paying attention to other areas of my life. And I needed a break, which is truthfully, what I think I had realized. I think I knew it deep down for a while, for a couple months at least, that I had needed a break and that I was doing too much. Because again, my anxiety helps me to be productive and do all these things, but again, there's a cost with that. And I let it go too long. And I didn't really tell many people about this. I did tell one person, and I did tell my girlfriend, Carissa, who is one of my biggest supporters, biggest fans, and one of the most amazing people I have in my entire life. I told her in April or May of this past year, that what I had been feeling, that I had been feeling burnt out, and that I had wanted to take a break for the month of July. Because of course, as a teacher, we have summers off, so I felt like that would be the ideal time. And it's really funny how the universe, and over the last 6 months, I've had many moments like this. Whether you believe me or not, or believe in like a higher power. Again, I'm not really a religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person, in many respects. And I truly believe, though, that our lives, the universe really gives us exactly what we need when we need it. There's this song that I listened to over the last 6 months by Quinn 92, and it's called "Right Where You Should Be." I encourage anybody to check that song out because it's fantastic, and it was very relatable to what I was going through, what I have been going through over the last 6 months. So I think deep down I knew that I needed a break, but I don't know if I had the strength to make that move and take that break. But again, it's funny how life, when you need it, it will give you exactly what you need. And I hit a very tumultuous and difficult time in my life, probably one of the hardest times of my entire life, around June, in the span of about 3 weeks. And again, I won't get into a ton of detail for the confidentiality of some of the people involved. But I had someone close to me that I saw every day, that was working with every day, suddenly passed away. I was also dealing with some health complications myself. Nothing major, but just minor things that were nagging at me. I think maybe more stress induced than I had realized at the time. And I was also dealing with some also personal problems that and issues in my life that I don't want to divulge, again, for confidentiality. But there was just a lot going on at once. And I had decided that to get away, that I would go on a camping trip with some friends. And as people that know me well know, I'm like a big nature guy. I love hiking and things like that. But I had even been really neglecting hiking or working out consistently. Again, just not taking care of myself at all. Prioritizing, I would work, a 8 to 10, 12-hour day. And I'd come home and work on the podcast for 4 or 5 hours. Wasn't really sleeping as much as I should have. Just going through everything I was going through in my personal life. I just wasn't in a good place. And I started to get, not only the anxiety started to get really, really bad, but I also became very depressed. And I knew I needed to step away from the podcast because of that. What I didn't realize what would come next. I was camping again with some friends in June. And all of these things unfortunately came to a head, and I had a stress-induced seizure in the middle of the woods. And thankfully, I had some incredible friends of mine around with me who brought me back to consciousness, rushed me to the hospital. I got tests done, and I was hooked up to all these machines for a day or two, and over the course of the next week had to get all these tests done to see if it was anything serious. And fortunately, by the grace of whatever higher being you want to believe in, or whatever, I don't know what I believe, to be honest, sometimes, but I know there's a higher power. I'm not sure what, but fortunately it was nothing more than just stress induced. But for me, I think what that made me realize, it really put things into perspective of how far I had let that go, and how far I let myself go, and neglected my mental health and my physical health, or like I said, neglected my mental health, and it affected almost my physical health. Like, there would have been a possibility that if I didn't have friends with me when that happened, or anyone around me, that I might not be here right now. And that reality sat with me so hard, and actually in a lot of ways made it worse. I felt worse than I did even before I left for this trip, which was the opposite of what it was intended to be. But again, it's really interesting how some of these things happen. I'll tell a couple of quick stories. This first one, so when I had the seizure, there was luckily we were at a campsite, and the campsite grounds manager, at 11:30 at night, luckily one of the people I was with, she had the wherewithal to just like sprint down and find him. And he came driving over and spoke with me, made sure I was okay. Once I was kind of coming back to consciousness, told us where the hospital was. And then they released me the next morning. And as I was gathering my things back and gonna leave to go home, and start this process of figuring out if I was gonna be okay, I stopped at his campsite. I don't know really what came over me or why I wanted to, or why I thought I needed to, but I just wanted to. I guess in some respect, I just wanted to thank him for coming to my aid and being somebody, like just a complete stranger, like worrying about me. And weirdly enough, he recognized me right away and he was excited and actually happy that I was okay and that I was, in front of him. And he had said he'd been worrying about me all morning. And we had long story short, we had this really amazing 20-30 minute conversation. And this man was much, much older than me, probably in his 70s or his 80s. And he taught me so many things in that 20 to 30 minutes I can't even describe. And we found out we had so much in common. He started sharing a lot of his story of his past traumas. And, and I don't want to sit here and say that I've had a difficult life or a difficult childhood, because I think that would be, I did have a good childhood in a lot of ways, but there were things that I dealt with in my life, and personal people that know me really, really well know what I've been through in my life. And I had a hard time for a long time. And again, it was a lot of stems of my anxiety were some of the things that I've been through in my life. And weirdly enough, he and I had been through a lot of similar things. And he just kind of opened up to me and talked to me about a lot of these things. And I found that to be so profound and serendipitous in so many ways, because what he was telling me was exactly what I needed to hear. And he said something to me that sticks out to me very much. He said to me that, everything in life happens for a reason, a season, a moment, or a lifetime. And he said, you and I are having a moment right now, and I'm being impacted just as much by you as you are by me. And, I will never forget this moment, and I want you to never forget this moment. And try your best to take better care, and what has happened to you last night, and just take better care of yourself. And I drove home pretty much the first 20 minutes after that conversation, driving home, I was just in tears, just crying, realizing how low I had gotten and allowed myself to get. And you probably never would have known it. I do a nice job of hiding it, unfortunately. During the episodes that I was putting out and, putting out all the content, you would never have thought that I was struggling. But the reality is that I was. And, I just really decided at that moment that I needed to take the time to get myself healthy and get myself right. So I started going back to therapy, something that I had done in my early 20s, but had pretty much neglected for a number of years. So I went back to therapy, and I appreciate my therapist very much. He's done so much for me, helped me in so many areas of my life the last 6 months. I started getting on a much better workout regimen than I had in the past, and was eating better, meditating, sleeping, reading. I spent a lot of time in nature, and just living in the moment, being in the moment, enjoying my life again, something I hadn't really been doing in a while, just because of all the responsibilities that I had. And really just took some time for myself, and even took a little personal retreat up to I stayed on a farm in upper state New York for 3 days, no electronics, and literally nobody but myself, and 110 acres of land to explore, books to read, meditations to do, and journaling. That's been a big thing for me too lately, is just doing a lot of writing, just for myself and getting my thoughts down, and just trying to start to this process of just getting myself healthy again. And so that's really where I was this last 6 months, just trying to get healthy. And unfortunately, I realized that it was hard for me. I found it very difficult for me to do the podcast while I was going through all these things. It wasn't easy to give it up. As many of you know, this is the studio that's in my house, in my home. It's actually like a room that's like split into two sections. So my bedroom is like on the opposite side of this wall over here to like, you can't really see it, but um, so I'm up here all the time, and I would walk by, of course, this part of the room every single day. And I had a really hard time sitting in the seat or even just coming over to the side of the room for the longest time. I had this strange sort of resentment almost towards the podcast and everything that we had built, because of all the pressure I'd put on myself for it to be successful and to give you guys the best content possible. So yeah, and I realized that I needed to step away, and I wasn't sure if I was ever going to come back, truthfully. I didn't want to like never, say that and change my mind. I left it open. But I lost motivation to even sit in this seat. But I started to over the last few months. Last 2 months, I would say, I've started to acclimate myself back over to this side of the room, sit in it, be in it, process it, feel it. And as I've worked my way back to trying to come back to this, I'm starting to feel a lot more ready. And simply because I truthfully do believe that the seizure was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to get better and forced me to focus on myself and my mental health. And I don't think I would have done that had it not happened. And I'm so blessed to be here recording this right now, to be reconnecting with some of you and a lot of you already. And that was the other amazing thing about this too, is so many of you during this time reached out, wondering what was going on with me. And I know I wasn't as detailed as I could have been about what was happening, but I tried to be as detailed as possible. And for a long time, I wasn't even on social media. I had really neglected the email, the DMs. Like, I just kind of neglected all of it. I apologize to anybody I never got back to. It was never personal. I never meant for that to happen. It just ended up being what it was. I needed to just, again, focus on myself. But there's a couple of things that I've realized throughout this time that I've taken off. And the first is that, and I had this conversation with somebody that I'll also keep nameless, but we were sharing some things that we had both been through back and forth. And one of the things he had talked about was also taking a break for himself from the creative side of things. And, he had mentioned that, he wanted to get back to 100%. And in that moment, it kind of hit me. I realized that I don't think we ever are 100%. As I sit here today, recording this, talking to you, I am not 100%. I can tell you that I am so much better now than I was 6 months ago when I left this podcast and took a hiatus. So much better. Am I 100%? No. But I don't think I ever will be. I don't think any of us ever will be. And I think that's the other thing too, we have to understand and realize that that's okay. We will never be 100%. Because if we are, that means we have nowhere to go but down. We have nowhere to grow. So I've realized that 100% is utopian. It's not anything that we can ever achieve. And I think that that's important to understand and realize, and accept that and be okay with that, and not put so much pressure on ourselves to be 100%. When we're not feeling well, listen to ourselves, listen to our bodies, listen to our minds. Something that I didn't do for a really, really long time. And I paid a price for it. Luckily, I did not pay the ultimate price for it. and that I'm here still. But if this, and the reason why I'm telling this story and kind of opening up about all these things is because I hope that even if there's just one person out there that is struggling through their mental health, or they're not sure how to get help, I just encourage everybody. And even if you feel like you don't really, you're not struggling, but maybe there's, an aspect of your life you want to improve on, don't wait. Do it now. Go get that therapist that you've been putting off, that you said you would get, but you haven't. Sign up for that gym that you haven't signed up for because you've been putting it off because you're scared or you're nervous. And that's, again, when I was when I did my personal retreat and I was by myself and no electronics, nobody with me, that time was uncomfortable in a lot of ways. But the beautiful part about that was I found so many amazing moments of bliss and purity through those moments of uncomfortability. And when juxtaposed with those moments of uncomfortability, those moments of purity and bliss and like peacefulness that I found, it stood out in comparison. And I think if we look at life that way, where, we're all going to have hardships in our lives. My trauma is not your trauma. What I've been through in my life is not what you've been through. But I think if we do a better job of understanding each other a little better, having a little more empathy, normalizing mental health, normalizing the strategies that are out there for us to cope with these issues. If you are burning out from social media or really anything, like, take a break. A break is okay. Because the only thing at the end of the day that we have is our own health, and we can't do the things that we want to do without our health. It's just it's imperative that we take care of ourselves. And so again, I encourage people to talk to a friend, talk to a family member you trust, get a therapist, work out regularly, fix your diet if that's a problem for you. I mean, for me personally, like, I've been on a much better workout regimen. I've been doing yoga a lot. That's been huge for me, like beneficial, not only for my mind, but for my body. I'm prioritizing my health, because before I would get home after work and I would say to myself, okay, I need to edit this episode. Where can I fit in a workout, or where can I fit in time to meditate or read? When it should have been the opposite. It should have been, okay, I have to meditate, I have to read, I have to work out. Where can I find time to edit this episode? That's the mindset that I needed to flip. And I'm thankful that I did, and that I'm still here to share this with you. It's important, I think, too, and it's very, and again, another thing that's very serendipitous is that it's, weirdly enough, I saw this the other day, that it's Men's Mental Health Month, which apparently seems like there's a month for everything these days. But I don't think we should have a month for mental health. It's an everyday thing, and it shouldn't be just for men. It should be for women and any gender that you are. But I think specifically as men, sometimes I will say that, we tend to bottle things up a little bit more. There's kind of that toxic masculinity in our society. Still, I think it's getting better, but there's still, I think, elements of that. And we need to kind of break those stigmas down a little bit more, as men, be more open about our mental health and our struggles. Again, any gender, anybody going through hard times, I think we need to lean on each other and support each other in those moments and do what we need to do for ourselves. And then the other thing that, I had been thinking about coming back over about the last month or so, I had mentioned things to Sam and to Phoenix, who, again, I can't thank enough, who have been such a huge support system for me throughout this time. They were, of course, disappointed that, I was going to step away and that we were going to take a break, but they understood. They've stuck by me, and they're ready to hit the ground running with me now, to bring this back. And I've realized, too, another thing is that, unfortunately, we'll be starting slow. we won't be really, I think, going at the pace that we were at before. We're not going to be able to take on as much work, at least to start, than we had in the past, because there's that saying of doing things over and over again and expecting different results. That's like the definition of insanity. So I don't want to drive myself to that place again where it's overwhelming. So bear with us as we start to roll out some more content. And again, I just want to thank everybody that has stuck by us and that reached out to me throughout this time. I really can't thank you guys enough for the support. And I'll leave you with this last story of how I knew that it was time for me to come back, and gave me the motivation to get behind the microphone again and do this episode. So again, it's the first time I've been in front of a microphone in 6 months. A little nervous, if you can't even tell, which is strange. I don't know why I'm nervous, but I was at a Friendsgiving with my girlfriend's side of her friends. So again, I'm friends with them through her, and they don't like know me as well as my real friends do. Not that they're not real friends, but anyway, I met somebody, one of her friends in her group that I hadn't met before. And we were having a conversation about, I don't remember even what it was about. And out of the blue, he says to me, all right, this is going to sound weird, but I've been meaning to say this to you for a few minutes now. But I follow your podcast because you interviewed my old college friend of mine, Slim DeWitt. Well, shout out to Slim, who I've talked to a few times as well, and has been majorly supportive of my hiatus and all this. And I thought that was just a very serendipitous thing, where he was even showing me like, hey, like I'm subscribed to your YouTube channel, and we had never met before. And it's not like lately I haven't been talking about the podcast. I didn't bring it up in that moment because again, it's been one of those things. It's been a tough conversation for me because it's been hard for me to have stepped away from this. And it was just amazing to have that. And weirdly enough, another ironic piece as well. My school found out about the podcast, ironically, during the time that I was not doing it, which is kind of funny. And they want me to start a podcasting course at the high school I work at, which is super cool and amazing and humbling. And I'm able to bring my love of it together. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And that has also given me some motivation as well to come back. The encouragement that I've gotten from my bosses and my principal and my director to come back to the podcast and start writing curriculum for that course. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to inspire some other people to create their own podcasts. I already helped a few other people before this even help their podcasts. So it's a huge thing I'm inspired by. And I think it's going to help seamlessly get me into this. And the last part I'll say as well, another reason why I felt like I had to take a step away, with back to the burnout situation that I was feeling, I didn't feel like I was listening to music anymore for enjoyment. I was listening to music more for business purposes or for the podcast. Like, I realized that every time I went to listen to music, it felt like work or like a job. And I think that's too when I realized like, oh wow, like I need a break, because something I'm passionate about, something I love, it shouldn't feel like work. It shouldn't feel like a job. I shouldn't be losing love for listening to music on my own. So that was another indicator for me that I had to step away. When I was able to sit back and look at everything from an outside perspective, I realized how much I needed to take a break. So again, I apologize for not being transparent about where I was and what happened. I appreciate everybody that reached out during this time and supported me when I needed it most. I can't thank you guys enough. I can't even thank you as well for like the support I've gotten and just like the 2 posts I've already done. Like, kind of announcing that we were coming back, like just the encouragement of everybody saying like, we're so happy you're coming back. And, we love it. We're just so happy. Like, it makes me so happy to hear all these things. And so I just appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And I just encourage you, whoever you are, whether you're a content creator or not, if you are suffering from mental health, if you get anything from this episode, or this, I guess, call to action, if you will, if you are suffering from mental health, please get help. Please, I beg you, do not wait. Don't get to the place that I got to, because it could have gone a different way for me. But I'm here. I'm so happy to be here and be talking to you. And I can't wait to hit the ground running again and get back to the podcast and get back to listening to your music and reconnecting with all of you. And yes, as I mentioned, I'm not a 100% yet. I never probably will be. But I'm better today than I was yesterday. And even if I slip up today, I think I have the tools necessary to cope. And that way I will be okay for tomorrow. And that's the main goal. Get 1% better every single day. Thank you so much if you've made it to this end. I really appreciate the time. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. Take this time with your family and your friends and be grateful and thankful for what you have. Be in good health. I wish you all good health. And again, if you are suffering from mental health, please get help. And if you ever want to talk, I'm a DM or an email away. I promise that I will try my best to get back to everybody as quickly as I possibly can. But again, thank you guys so much for the support. I hope that my story, sharing pieces of my story, will help somebody out there, even if it's just one person. And be on the lookout for some content coming soon. But until then, I'm Mike with the Turntable Teachers, and class is dismissed.